you.
All right, we're gonna get going. Okay. Just in case I want to see if I knock that over once or twice. All right. So the goal today and what I want to teach today is just about growing peppers and tomatoes. And I'm going to go over a lot of information. You can ask as many questions as you want. But the goal today is to kind of cover, it's really important to understand types and varieties, because if you don't understand the different types of varieties, you can't make the proper selection so that you are successful. This is a big mistake people make right out of the gate. They just pick the one that somebody recommended, and it might not be best suited for their particular growing setup or their space. Preparation, there's some simple, common preparation steps we'll review over to make sure that we have good soil, that everything is laid intact before we get them in the ground. How to plant them, basic care and things that you can encounter as you go along, such as pest or disease, and then harvest. So right out of the gate, one of the most important things to consider, like I mentioned, is the types and varieties that you can encounter. So tomatoes are, you kind of have a few decisions to make. First and foremost, we want to determine whether we want an heirloom seed or a hybrid. This is a common thing. People come in, they want an heirloom. So an heirloom is an open pollinated variety, so it's happened naturally in nature. And those varieties, you can take that, you can grow it, you can harvest the seeds, replant them, and get the exact same tomato over and over and over again. A hybrid, on the other hand, is basically two open pollinated varieties, and we as people take them and we cross-pollinate them to get a new variety, and that new variety is going to carry traits from those other two varieties, such as maybe one has disease resistance, one might have some form of pest resistance, or one might do better in hot conditions. So when we look at tomatoes, most commonly people are going to grow hybrids because we live in a really volatile climate. It gets really hot really fast, and one of the most common issues we get are pests and disease. So you'll mostly see people leaning towards a hybrid. Heirlooms, there are a handful of varieties that are going to do well, but what you find most like die-hard heirloom growers, they'll tell you that those tomatoes taste the absolute best, but the production is not very high most of the time. So you're going to have the same size plant, all the same inputs and effort, with a lot less production, but they might be the best tasting production you get. So having a mixture is what some people will do.
Okay, the heirloom and the hybrid, when I come to buy, like Better Boy, how do I know if that's a hybrid or a heirloom?
Most of them will tell you on the tag. If they don't, we'd recommend to ask.
Okay.
If you go to, if you're not coming somewhere like my store, Miss Donna can tell you on all of them. If you go somewhere else, if you can't, always recommend people, nowadays take out your phone, do a quick Google search, look it up, make sure you know what you're getting. Because it'll lead us to the second one, like our indeterminate or determinate. When you go to a nursery, no matter where you go, you're 99% not going to find that on a tag for this particular information. And this is probably more important to me than the other, because when we're looking at this definition here, we're looking at how does the plant grow and how does it produce.
That's what those two mean right there.
So indeterminate is going to be vining. So it's going to be very large. It's going to continue to grow throughout the whole season. And also means it's going to continue to produce throughout the season. So it's going to have larger plant, a lot more support. So it's going to be better suited for someone who's got trellising, something set up or prepared ahead of time to be able to contain and hold it up, because once it gets full of fruit, it's going to be very heavy. So indeterminates take a little more planting. Determinate is very popular. The most popular tomato that we see planted is the improved Celebrity. It's not the best tasting, but it's good. It's a prolific producer. It's a lot of disease and a little bit of heat resistance in there. But it grows more compact, more bush-like, and the big difference there, it's going to put on the entire crop in one set amount of time. So that plant's going to grow to its size, it's going to produce, and then it's done. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. So a determinate would be better suited for somebody maybe that's growing in containers or small spaces. If you have somebody who has lots of room, lots of raised beds, or maybe in the ground, your indeterminate might be better if you've got a trellis system. A lot of people will have like string where they can string them up and help raise them up. And you can do cages, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. But depending on what you're doing, this is not a viable solution. So just an example, you also have like type. Y'all mentioned earlier, like the little bitty. You have small, medium, and large size tomatoes. So your smaller ones, like sweet 100s, grapes, Romas, those typically are going to be indeterminate, and they're going to grow longer, and they tend to have a longer season than most of the larger tomatoes. Your medium are going to be the most popular because people are looking for something they can slice up that they might be able to use in cooking. Celebrity being really popular. Better Boy, Big Boy follow right behind that as like all-time favorites. Park Swapper is another old-time favorite that people go to.
Are those determinate or indeterminate?
Celebrity is going to be a determinate. I believe Better Boy maybe an indeterminate, but I don't always have it in my head. I have to look often.
I'm thinking that grape tomato is the one Pat's looking for.
Yep, like you can get, like you also in your cherries, you can also get like small and you can get large cherries. So there are different sizes in some of these definitions.
Yes.
So,
But it'll say it on the tag.
Yep.
Okay.
then lastly, you have like your large, like Beef Masters,
yeah.
beefsteak, Cherokee Purple is a good heirloom that does pretty well here. And they're gonna get, you could get a 1 pound, tomato
Real.
versus like your mediums, 10 ounces, and then your smaller, they're not very heavy at all. One thing too, before we move on, I always like to preface, oftentimes I get people coming in all the time, and when I talk about hybrids, their mind jumps to what we call a GMO, which is a genetically modified organism. So there's what they call GMO seeds out there where they're like a hybrid. They've modified them, like the DNA of that particular seed and plant, to be able to be resistant to maybe a weed killer or a specific pest, or they can infuse a certain pesticide into it. That's not something that you're ever going to find in a garden center. It's a controversial topic among many groups nowadays, but GMOs are used in large monoculture, big scale farming, and they're not something you're going to find that the average person like us can get a hold of.
Yeah.
And they're very expensive too. So I always like to tell people that because I do get that, and a lot of people are just not familiar with what that is. They think hybrid and genetically modified are the same, and they're not. Hybrids can exist in nature. It's just you plant two things, they could cross-pollinate in your garden naturally, but it's not foolproof. So
You gotta have bees though.
you have to have some kind of pollinator. Like your typical honeybee is honestly one of the minority pollinators. While they're good pollinators, but honeybees don't use every source of pollen and nectar. So one of the things we talk a lot about, like in my upcoming class next week about spring prep, is like planning for diversity. You need lots of different species of plants, different colors of flowers, herbs. You need things to draw in solitary bees, butterflies, just different types of pollinators, because the honeybee alone is not, they're not the only thing you're going to get.
What's your number one flower that you grow for that?
Truthfully, what we do for pollinators, mostly we focus very heavily on herbs. Herbs are the easiest thing that you can grow in conjunction with some of your other vegetables that will draw in pollinators. So parsley, fennel, dill, basil, like not your Italian basil. You want like a good flowering basil, like African blue, cinnamon, Thai, lemon basil. Those will be like pollinator crazy. So
Lemon basil.
Yep.
I've never heard
We
of
had
that.
that basil, it was that
Yeah,
high.
but I
Yep,
don't
there's
know
some
what
that get
kind
big.
it
The bees
was.
were all over
yep,
it.
and there's different, and then some of them flower all the time, like your Italian basil flowers, and then the taste changes. You don't want it to flower because it doesn't taste the same as if it doesn't. So being
Say
selective
that one
on
more
what,
time?
so like Italian or Genovese basil, if it
Uh-huh.
goes to seed and flower, the taste of the actual basil tends to change,
Okay.
and it's not favorable for most people. Don't like that taste. So I like regular Italian basil. You always keep cutting it, keeping it compact and trimmed so that it doesn't flower.
Okay.
So a lot of the same things exist when we're looking at peppers as well. You know, we have heirloom, hybrid. We do have indeterminate and determinate. Now, when you look at a pepper plant, most of the pepper plants grow about the same size. They're not going to get really, really, really big. But the big difference when we look at indeterminate and determinate here is how long they produce. Some of these peppers are going to produce like for a very long time. Some are going to produce for a shorter period of time. That's really where you start seeing the difference in that in peppers. But for the most part, you can get the majority of the peppers that we grow commonly are going to grow most of the season.
Question. Okay, the peppers we see, just like HEB or whatever, they're huge.
Mhm.
Okay. You have those particular type of seeds here? Because I have cut them and dried them and tried to plant them myself, and they've grown, but they come out real small.
Like if it's like bell peppers and such,
Jalapeno.
jalapenos, it all comes down to the variety and also environmental conditions. It gets
So if you get seed from a big pepper, that doesn't mean your peppers are gonna be that big.
a lot of times like large peppers could be hybrids. So if you plant those seeds, you're not going to get the true. You're going to get part or a different
Right.
actual pepper. So it's
Understood.
not unlike an heirloom. You'll get that true production
Size.
every time.
Okay.
So, biggest difference in peppers, as we all know, goes from sweetness to heat, and that's all over the place nowadays. An interesting thing that we always find is that when we're on the lower end of the Scoville scale, peppers tend to grow, the plant itself grows quicker. When we move to the hotter, the plants tend to grow more compact and much slower. So preparation. So preparation for planting tomatoes and peppers is not much different really than anything else, but there's some key things that I want to point out. Number one, if we already have a garden, we need to make sure that we're scoping out a place in the garden that's going to have obviously full sun. That's 6 to 8 hours. I need to examine that and determine when that is. Ideally, anytime I'm doing gardening, if I can get morning to early afternoon sun, my plants are going to be much happier, less stressed. If I get that afternoon sun, because we're going to be moving from cool to hot, that's the part of the full sun that here is different from other places.
Cause it's so hot.
It's very hot, and when a plant receives that really, really hot weather and it's drying out and the leaves are constantly stressed because it's so hot, that plant uses more water, the watering becomes inconsistent. That can lead to blossom interrupt, which we'll talk a little bit about later. It can also lead to nutrient deficiencies, so the plant's using up resources because it's trying to mitigate the stress that's happening. So ideally, if you can,
Heat of the day.
and I'll talk
Not
about
really.
some ways you can alter that later on. So the first thing we want to do is we want to check for soil consistency. Before I ever plant anything in, whether I'm in the ground or raised beds or in a container, I've got to check and make sure, like, what does the soil look like? I want to be able to like squeeze it together, and I want it to crumble apart. If I squeeze it together and it's holding into like a solid form, or it's not crumbling apart, that means it's going to hold too much moisture and it's not going to drain well. It could also lead to just uneven moisture. It's also going to be harder for those roots to get through there. Oxygen is equally important as water for root systems. It's also important for soil microbes, which are going to help you have healthier plants and healthier soil. So if we check it and it's crumbly, usually we're pretty good to go. We do a no-till method. We also grow in raised beds, so a lot of the times what I'm going to do is I might work the top 8 inches if it's not crumbly. But a lot of times what I'm going to do, if it is holding together, then I'm going to need to amend it. I'm going to need to put something in there that's going to help loosen this up. And we'll do that oftentimes by adding expanded shell. I don't think I have any in here. Expanded shells like perlite or vermiculite, we'll work it into some of our raised beds.
I've got both of them.
And it's like a little, expanded shell is like a little volcanic rock that's been popped. So on a larger scale, think of kind of like lava rock, but much smaller. You can't see the little pores in it. And it doesn't break down like vermiculite or perlite, so it works very well in a raised bed to promote good drainage and keep the soil from binding or
What's the
bonding.
vermiculite? Is that the white?
Yep, vermiculite and
Is
perlite are
that,
like,
it looks like styrofoam.
it's not, but it does look like a styrofoam, and it works. But the problem with that is over time it breaks down, and then it turns to really fine particles, and that's okay. But then we're gonna have to amend it again, and that's one of the reasons why I talk a lot about expanded shell, because expanded shell is one you can work in one time, and it's not gonna go away. It'll be
Does it come in sacks?
yeah, and it's very inexpensive, and I'll be long gone before that expanded shell breaks down fully.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Sure.
If-
Have a pen, we can-
I have one right here. You can use.
Look, oh, look, your wife.
Okay, so just write that, vermiculite.
Expanded shell is what I like the most. Then you can do vermiculite or perlite. If we do have the soil and it is crumbly and it's fine, then I don't want to turn it over. What often I'm going to do is I'm going to take a hand tool or something in a raised bed, and I'm going to kind of just stick it down in the soil gently, and I'm going to kind of rock it back and forth. This is based on an old technique called broad forking, where they had a tool, and in ground they would press it down and they would rock it back and forth. And what that does, it's opening up the soil, allowing oxygen, water, and nutrients to get farther down in there. But it's less evasive than tilling. When you go and you till, what happens is you're destroying a lot of the natural ecosystem. In order to have a healthy plant, a healthy soil, and to be like super successful long term, you've got to have bacteria, fungi, and other microorganisms. People look at those things and they're like, oh, that's bad. No, you can't have a healthy soil without those items. And what will happen if we till will disturb that. And for instance, mycorrhizal fungi will bind to the root tips of your tomato plant, a pepper plant, and it can reach out and grab nutrients in the soil that are outside the plant's root zone, and it can bring that back, and it will trade the plant for sugars. So they work together, they live symbiotically, and they benefit each other. So every time we go in and we till, we're kind of disrupting our soil, and will that stuff potentially come back? Sure, but we're kind of starting over. So we're keeping that intact. So if we need to, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to amend the soil. And amend, I don't mean fertilize. A lot of times in a raised bed, you'll notice that if you've had one, I don't know why I always draw a circle bed.
I've got it raised beds.
Yeah. So you'll notice over time, you started off with a full bed, and then over time the soil level
Goes down.
and that's natural because that means that microbes are breaking down the soil into smaller and smaller and smaller pieces. And that's kind of when you look at, like, if you put your hands in here, you see you have some medium, small size particles, and you have real fines. Eventually everything is going to become a fine. So when I say amend, what I mean by that is to add like a good quality compost and top dress your bed. What
do you
So-
consider in a compost? A good compost. What do you put in it?
I'll use a combination of compost sometimes. If it's your home compost, you're going to have a good compost, but you need to make sure it's very fine and that it's fully broken down. If you're buying a compost, you want to just look at what the ingredients are. Not all composts are created equal. Compost is not also heavily regulated, so a lot of things can be called compost that maybe aren't the best to put in. So we look at compost, we'll typically do leaf mold compost, which is made from leaves and other vegetation. It's a bacterial compost. It's very, very amazing some of the things it can do. Even on a lawn, people top dress lawns with it now. It's full of nutrients and resources. So what we'll do, is we'll take that compost and we'll add that on top. So instead of just adding more soil, which a high quality soil often will have compost in it, that'll be the primary component. But I'll top dress because compost is very similar to a slow release fertilizer. It has nutrients, it has all kinds of things that will help the soil, and if I top it up here, it's going to work its way down, and all the benefits of that compost are going to seep down as I water. Whereas if I just take that compost and I turn it all in, all those things that I've built up in my soil, the microbes, I'm disturbing them, and then I'm also, that compost is down here, and that's not bad, but I could be getting more benefit out of it by top dressing with it.
So you like it on the top?
Yep, we use compost just to fill our beds back up.
So like in your compost at home, like my brother-in-law started one, and we didn't really know what we were doing, I don't think, but like coffee grinds, eggshells,
Yeah.
peelings from carrots, cucumbers, all that. We threw that in there last year, so I don't know, we
He's
just
gonna
kind
have
of
to get to the
stir
bottom
that
of
up.
that though, where it's fine.
Yeah, a lot of times, like, as a home, like composting at home, you see a lot of people that have like more than one bin,
Uh-huh,
and that's because as they work through the stages, they're not putting, if you're constantly adding fresh stuff on top,
right,
then the compost is never going to be ready. You're eventually going to have to stop. So
Ah,
that's where they'll create like a
I know.
3-bin system, and as they work their way, they always have a new pile starting. They have one that's like intermediate, and then they have their finish. And that way they
you
can.
just stir it up every now and then?
Yep, you want to keep it damp. It needs a little bit of water. You don't want it too wet.
Okay,
It's got to have heat. So
yeah, it's gotta decompose.
those microbes will heat it up. You've got to have the water element. Is really one of the biggest things. Moisture.
I guess we'll just go buy some.
That's what we're gonna do.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a long time. It takes over a year to make a good compost at home most of the time.
that's a year.
There's ways you can do it faster, but I mean, it just depends on how much you want to get
See,
into.
Joe needs to start another bed
Yeah,
instead of that one. Okay.
So the next thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to fertilize. So for me, we're a natural grower. I'm not going to say the word organic because I live in Southeast Texas. There's who knows what floating in the air, who knows what's in the ground. But we're going to do everything we can to grow food naturally because number one, it's going to help me keep the soil at a consistency that's loose and viable and healthy all the time. That's the most important thing in growing is soil health. It's also going to make sure that I have the most robust amount of nutrients available for my plants. And most all your organic sources are also going to have, basically, they're going to be slow release. So a lot of your common fertilizers that people use when you look like the old time favorite's always been triple 13. I used to could never keep it in stock whenever I first started in this world. Now it's not hard to keep in stock because I don't sell very much of it because the transition of people, at least my clientele, have seen the benefits of a slow release fertilizer, and it doesn't necessarily have to be organic if you don't care, but you want something that's slow release. The organic approach, though, will make your soil healthier long term, and it'll make you more successful long term. Maybe not in season one, but subsequent seasons.
I see a lot of people, some people that have bigger gardens put lime.
Yep, you can.
Now, lime is supposed to,
That's going to change your pH. And now a lot of people, 20 years ago when I first started this, almost every person just put lime in the garden. But the problem with that is they put lime in the garden blind. If you just take and you go and you put lime in the garden,
you don't even know what your soil consistency is.
you're changing the pH. And you can have all the nutrients in the world in the soil, but if the pH for a tomato plant, which is going to be slightly acidic to neutral, is not in that range, it can't get the nutrition it needs. You can supply all you want, but if the pH is wrong, then you can't absorb nutrition. So when you just put lime, or lime makes it more alkaline because our soil by nature here is slightly acidic. But on the other end, you can put sulfur to make it more acidic. But if you're putting that in there blind, over a period of time, you're changing that pH potentially, and you could be putting yourself outside that zone. So I always tell people, never put lime or sulfur without testing your soil. It's too easy to test your soil, whether you get a home kit or you send it off, even in a raised bed. There's
Do
no,
they still check that for you at Jefferson County Agriculture?
you have to send it off to A&M, like you send samples and they send you back a data
Really?
sheet. And it costs a little bit of money, but it'll give you the most accurate results.
Mhm.
Or you can buy a small kit like from Lawn and Garden Center like myself, and you can test it. And that'll tell you whether you need to change your pH. And if you don't, then having put something in will be less beneficial. So that same concept goes as the compost. Whenever I get ready to fertilize with my slow release, preferably an organic, I'm going to put it in that top layer, and I'm going to work it into the top couple inches of my compost. What that's going to allow me to do is, as that plant begins to grow and I begin to water and moisture, the organic is going to break down and seep down into the soil, passing through the root system.
How
Where-
soon do you need to put that in though?
Um,
Before you plant?
You can put it in right when you plant.
Oh, okay.
So that's one of the benefits, and you see a lot of people as well go to a slow release organic, is because you can't burn with them. I could accidentally dump this whole thing in one bed that's meant for a
That's
couple
what a lot
hundred
of
square
people
feet.
think. Fertilizer,
Yeah.
you know, while you plant,
Yeah.
you're gonna burn them.
Yep. This doesn't break down fast, so it's not going to oversupply nutrition. Where if I dumped a whole bag, a 4-pound bag of triple 13 into
Yeah.
a small bed, everything's gonna die.
Mm.
So yeah, it's more forgiving, but a lot of your organics are also robust. They also have microorganisms in it. They have things that are going to feed microorganisms. So it's a more robust diet, and it allows the soil, you're feeding the soil in this instance, not the plant. The last thing that you're going to want to do, in preparation, you don't want to put it out just yet, but you want to have it at the ready. You want to have some form of mulch. Mulching is often passed by in the home garden. Mulching will retain moisture. If you're planting early, like tomatoes, timing is important, and we'll get into that next. Mulching will help keep that soil warmth in when I'm planting early. It's also, as it gets hotter, it's going to keep the soil temperature cooler. It's also going to help me mitigate some types of disease that can start at the soil and work their way up. My preferential mulch,
Compost, okay, we've got the compost down. The mulch would be what, pine
Mulch.
needles?
pine needles, that's my preference for the home garden, because it's, if you see like in these buckets, it's fluffy.
Mhm.
It's not compacted. If you can use regular mulch, but you want to make sure you get a composted, like natural hardwood mulch, and those will be okay for a garden. Like your typical mulches you buy from, a box store or whatever.
Yeah.
A lot of those materials are not going to break down, and they're going to rob nutrition away from the soil. They'll rob nitrogen, and then your plant will get stunted.
So just cover your whole bed with that.
I do that after I have my plants planted and they get a
Okay.
little bit. I don't do it right away because I don't want to be. I'll
Well,
come
I've
back
got a
and
bunch
do
of-
it,
I've got a bunch of camp that I can just put some
Yeah.
in a bag and bring it home.
but I like to have it at the ready because otherwise I never have it when I need it. So,
Okay.
so planting. We're not going to talk a lot about seeds, but if we were going to have planted them by seeds, we needed to do that back in December or January. The
Even
ones
tomatoes?
tomatoes and peppers, both.
Okay.
Is if the ones I have in my cabinet in the front there, those were planted at the beginning of January, I think. They were planted a little later than I wanted to, but they're going to take 6 to 8 weeks to get to a size that I can go buy them somewhere else.
And that-
So,
What causes, because I planted some at the beginning of January, and I had one of those plastic totes,
Mhm.
and I put soil on the bottom, but I put them in the little cups. But all they did was just go straight up, two little leaves. That's all I got.
it's because not enough light. When you're starting the seeds, that light's got to be like 2 inches above it, and you gotta trail that light as you go.
Okay.
So like that's, if you look in there,
They're stretching for
Yeah,
light.
I got a bunch of empty trays in my cabinet because my lights are stationary, so I have to put something to raise it up, and then over time I lower them back down. So that light is a big issue there. They're stretching, looking for light, and that'll make a poor seedling.
But if I put them out in the sun, and it gets too hot in the box.
Yep, you know, you want artificial light indoors is the best way for starting seeds. You know, if they need that heat, you can get an inexpensive heating mat for growing plants. That's what we did. We had 95% germination this year. Last year,
Great.
with no heating in here, I got 0% because the cold air from the floor would make it just cold enough in here to where I couldn't, just nothing wanted to germinate. So I just changed the variables, almost 100% success.
Wow.
Good.
So if we're gonna plant seeds though coming up for fall planting, we can do that in late May and into June, because fall planting for tomatoes is gonna be about mid-August into latter part of August. Shorter window of opportunity, but timing is very important. Now, when we get it, if we're going out and we're buying plants, what we want to do is we want to target ideally the earliest possible planting we can. And people are going to be like, it's cold, you know, we're still going to get weather. Sure. But I always promote people to think about their particular setting and their environment and how the cold affects it. So I know back here in the back of the garden we have, I have no protection. If I get a frost or a freeze, it's going right on top of my plants. If I go home on the other side, my whole garden is covered under the canopy of oak trees, so the frost never really hits. Now if we get a freeze and I have moisture, then I know I can get ice on the leaves and I'll cover them. So you have to think about your environment. So I always tell people, if you got raised beds, get you some PVC pipe. Get you some hoops ready where you can stick them in there and get some frost cloth and have it ready to go, because if you can plant them as early as possible, one of the things you're going to do is you're going to avoid common disease and pests. Some of the most prevalent issues that people have with tomatoes come when it starts getting hot and the plants become stressed. So early planting, last year we planted our tomatoes in the back garden February 6th. So I would have already had them in the ground almost a week at this point. I went through 2 cold events. I put my PVC up, I covered them. I lost 1 out of 8 plants that I put back there.
And what do you cover them with? Cheesecloth?
Frost cloth. Frost cloth is like a permeable fabric that allows air through. People think, oh no, that's not good. No plastic, just frost cloth, straight down to the edges of the bed, and I weight them down, and I keep it off the plant. I don't want it on the plant. That's why those hoops are important. It keeps it up, and what it does is trapping all that heat that's releasing from the soil, and it's creating not a greenhouse, but it's creating this pocket of warm air that's different from the outside, and those few degree differences is what makes the plant survive oftentimes. So, you know, it's when you're
So you only cover them when you're getting cold weather?
when I'm getting a frost or a freeze. Other than
That's
that,
it.
I'm usually good. So I'll just take some PVC and I'll make me some hoops,
Yeah.
and then I just lay my fabric over the top, and then I'll weight it down with something on the edges. But it's got to go back to the soil, not to the ground. You know, if you're doing this in the ground, like a row garden, or you're covering something else, you want it to go straight down to the ground. But in a bed, I want it to go back, and I tuck it into the edges of the bed, and I weight it down so that it holds that warm air from the soil inside. And that's what allows me to plant early, and that'll help me avoid some of the pest issues we'll talk about. So even if we're growing our own or we're buying transplants, ideally if we can plant in the evening or on a cloudy day, which is usually pretty easy to do here, that's going to allow a little less stress on the plant. Because ideally, no matter whether you buy them or you're growing seedlings, so the ones I have in there, when I get ready to go plant them, I'm going to have to take those and I'm going to have to start acclimating them. If I just take them right out of the cabinet inside here where the temperature's been consistent, there's no wind, no stressors, and I go put them out there, they might be fine. But what's going to happen? They're just going to sit there. They're not going to grow. They're going to kind of be in shock. So by acclimating or doing what we call hardening off, we'll take those out in the tray. I'll put them out in the morning, let it get a little bit of morning sun for a couple hours when I can. I'll pull it in. Next day, I'll give it a little more. And I'll work my way up to leaving them out and getting them acclimated to more natural sunlight. And that's going to allow that plant, when I go put it in that garden, to actually start growing. It's not going to be like oh my God. And I always tell people, think about like the coldest day we've had, and y'all are both at home, and he goes outside to do something real quick, and you lock him out. You're gonna be shocked because you're gonna be unprepared, cold, miserable, and you know you're gonna stop. You're gonna go into preservation. So plants don't like things that we don't like. So once we get them ready to plant too, before I move on to this section here, tomatoes are very unique because they grow the little hairs on the stem. So if you just me my little plant, so you have all these little hairs. So if you have a really tall plant or a decent sized transplant, depending on how you're growing them up, you'll want to remove the bottom leaves, and then you can plant that deep. All these will turn into roots over time, and it'll give you a sturdier, healthier plant long term. Now on the other side, the peppers, you cannot do that. You got to plant them at the level in which you got them in. As you plant them deep, the stem is going to rot.
Did you know that?
That's with peppers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did that with my tomatoes. My daddy told me that.
So watering's pretty simple. In the raised bed, you want to make sure that you're watering when the soil needs it. Before we go out and water, we stick our fingers in the dirt and test with our knuckles. If I can put my fingers down deep enough and I can still come out with like damp soil and my plants still look okay, oftentimes I'm not going to water. Because if I overwater, I'm washing nutrients out of the root zone. I'm making conditions that might be more susceptible for disease or other issues. But ideally, most people overwater.
They water every day.
Yep. So we water infrequently. So we can get away sometimes even when it's warm at home, because I do have some artificial shade and I understand my environment. I don't water every day, even during the summer. We water every couple days. Whereas out here, I might have to water every day because I'm getting morning, midday, all afternoon sun. See, and that's why I always will go and stick my hand in the dirt to see, because the top layer might be light colored. It may look okay, but where those roots are, it might still be holding a lot of moisture. So just because the top looks dry doesn't mean that it needs to be watered.
Okay.
So, but you do that because you want deep watering. So when you go and you get your hose and you go out there and water, you want to make sure that you water long and slow. Think of like drip irrigation. It's letting a little bit of water over a really long period of time, and what that's allowing is you're allowing the soil to saturate and actually the water to go deeper. When you have deep watering, then you're also going to allow for when the water is going deep, roots are going to reach deeper. So if you water really shallow and every day, then you may have a plant that is, I got rid of all the bad markers. If you water shallow, then your plant is going to learn that, hey, all the water is here. So when you have a tall plant with a pepper or tomato with lots of heavy produce, we need a good footing. So deep watering is going to allow for deeper, healthier roots, and that's going to help you sustain a healthier plant.
Okay.
Because here, you're going to water all the time, because now the plant doesn't have deep roots, and it's going to start showing those stressful signs, even if there is water down here,
Because it's up
They're
there.
not
because it's
reaching
up
out.
here.
They don't
So
grow.
that's why I so slow, and most importantly, never water overhead, always water at the soil level. So we take a wand and we'll put it down in the soil and we'll water slowly at the soil. It's another reason why I like pine straw. I'll stick my nozzle through the straw, and that keeps some of the soil from splashing up onto the leaves of plants, helps prevent a lot of disease from getting started. So water slow at the soil level and kind of flood the bed so that it's soaking in.
So if you get one of those sprinklers, that's not too good.
Nope.
I usually use my it's shower, it's a hose.
Yeah,
and shit.
yep.
And I'll go, I try not to do it on
Towards
the plant, but I think I water every day, and that's not good.
Yep.
I'll learn.
Next thing, super important for both peppers and tomatoes is supporting them. Somebody's got to lift them up, got to hold them up. So when we go back to determinate and indeterminate, so if we got a determinate, it's a bush, we need something that's going to be more compact. Sometimes a good sized cage will be sufficient. What I like to do is I like to use some form of a center stake so that I can tie the main stalk to or trunk, and that will hold it up. And then I'll use a cage, ideally to hold the branches up so that I have support for the fruit so that my branches don't break. Now if I have an indeterminate, that's not going to work. These options here are not going to be sufficient. I'm going to need, you'll see a lot of people will do what they call, they'll have like the string method. They'll have something across, or they have I think it's the Florida weave. So they'll have strings hanging, and they'll attach their plant down here, and as the plant grows, they'll raise it up, pulling it up, letting it stretch out.
You keep tying it up.
Keep tying it up. That's a method that's very, very common for indeterminates. There's also, I think they call it I don't know exactly how they do it, the pattern, but it's like a Florida weave. They'll go across 2 points, like 2 stakes, and then
That's too much for me. I do the sticks.
So, but you just want to make sure you have something to support it. Now, when we get into tomato cages, I always like to show this. This is number one, not a tomato cage. This is a pepper cage.
Oh, really?
This is never going to be big enough for a tomato, ever.
That's what
Perfect.
I got, but yeah.
For a small, for a pepper plant, great. This, depending on if it's a determinate and not an indeterminate, probably. Now, one of the things I like to demonstrate about these is that you get what you pay for. And this, like, people get cheap on tomato cages, but tomato cages are not created equal. And if you think about them supporting your plant, and we have people that buy the cheap ones like this. If I press down on that and I put my body weight on, I'm going to crush it. This is going to last maybe a season or so. Most of the time they're going to break. Half the time they come in broken. This, the more weld points that you have on a tomato cage, and the more like side pieces, the stronger it gets. This one,
Wow.
I can put some weight on it. So this is going to last me, probably going to cost me twice as much, but it's going to last me many, many seasons.
But if you use a stake, it's just as good, as long as you tie them up.
Yeah, now I'll still use a stake in the middle to keep it in the center, but I need something to hold up.
Hold the branches.
Because otherwise, when it gets loaded down, it's going to break.
Correct.
I prefer this style because you look at, so this had 4 rings and 4 runners. This one has 5 rings and 8 runners. This will last me forever, like until it rusts out completely.
Does it fold?
Folds up too, so really beneficial. The folding thing doesn't really matter too much to me, but it's about the strength of it and the quality. A lot of people are like, "Oh, these are expensive," but
How much are they?
Ones like this can get around like $20.
Really?
But I have some of these that I've had for like
years.
I have some that my mom gave me from like probably 8 or 9 years ago, and we still use them.
Wow.
They don't deteriorate or break as much. So you can also find poly ones. These are good. They're sturdy. I probably couldn't put my weight on this, but this is it's going to hold some weight. Different. So we've got some different options there, but just look at what you're buying and like really think about it, because a lot of people think, oh, like, hey, this is the one I want because it's inexpensive, but in the long run, it might not have been the best choice.
Like you say, you pay for what you.
Yep. And I didn't touch on this when we're planting. If you are going to plant in a bucket, this is a pepper bucket. This is a minimum tomato bucket.
I know. I go down 27th Street, and there's a guy on the left-hand side. If you're going towards 365, he's got 5-gallon buckets.
Yep.
And they look like beanstalks because you don't have no foliage on it or nothing on it.
You got to have enough room for those roots to stretch out. You can't crowd it because if there's not enough soil, it's not going to grow. It's a big plant.
For tomatoes?
So that's like what we call like a 15-gallon nursery pot. That's minimum size and for one plant.
Wow.
So container growing, you know, is really to me best if you're doing like 1 or 2.
Mm-hmm.
So pruning on both these plants as they begin to grow up, whenever I have foliage or branches that are low to the soil level, we're gonna break them off, because when we're watering and soil splashes up onto the bottom of those leaves, that's the conditions that disease can get started. We always wanna make sure we're keeping our beds or any of our stuff weed free. The mulch will definitely help, especially pine straw does a wonderful job. But anything that's gonna be growing in there is gonna be competing for nutrients and resources, and it can lower your production or overall growth of your plant. And we talked about mulch, it's about keeping the moisture consistent, making watering less frequent. It's also gonna help keep the microorganisms and everything else happier in the soil and have a healthier plant. Lastly, we need supplemental fertilizer. And this is not a necessity. I'll fertilize the soil, but as the plants begin to bud or flower, then I know it's going to be using a lot more nutrients because it's putting on flowers and fruit. We'll start supplementing with like fish emulsion or a balanced organic. We like this Ocean Harvest from Microlife, but there's lots of them out there.
That's a liquid?
It's a liquid.
So how do you put it?
You can do one of 2 ways. You can mix it in a pump-up sprayer or a spray bottle, and you can spray the foliage.
Oh, the foliage.
Minerals and nutrients will absorb through the leaves. The water will not. I don't like spraying the leaves of tomatoes because of blight and other issues, so I will mix it in a watering can per the instructions, and I just water with it once every couple weeks.
Okay.
So really, really simple. That's going to help give a boost of nutrition. A liquid fertilizer is for the short game. The granulated stuff in the soil, that's for 2, 3, 4 month feeding. This is for it's kind of like the cup of coffee I gave you guys.
And what's it called? A supplement?
Supplemental fertilization. Think of it like taking vitamins, you know, or
Do you do that how often?
up to every 2 weeks, or depending on the product, always say go by the manufacturer's recommendations.
Oh yeah, stink bugs.
So pests. You know, pests are always an issue, you know. So up here I have the 4 most common pests for tomatoes and peppers. Number 1, tomato hornworm or worms in general. Worms are going to be difficult, you know. The hornworm, even though people hate them, they turn into a gigantic, beautiful moth, and they are a pollinator for other things, but they damage our crop. So when we're dealing with large worms like this, most of the time we're gonna, you know, I can find them, I'm gonna grab them, and I'm gonna remove them from the environment.
How about the ones that I call them cutworms? They're in the soil. They're white with the, you know, I guess they're white.
So a cutworm will cut your plant off at the base.
Correct.
Keeping mulch, good mulch around the base of your plant, oftentimes can help prevent cutworms. They don't like that environment. They want soil to be in, so that can be helpful. I don't ever find cutworms to be too much of an issue. Mostly it's going to be worms eating the leaves or getting into the actual produce itself.
You gotta look for them because you can't hardly see them.
Yep. Once you start seeing holes in the leaves or damage on the plant, majority of your worms are going to be nighttime feeders. You know, you think about the earthworm crawling across the sidewalk during the middle of the day, and he never makes it to the other side. He dries out and shrivels up.
Mm-hmm.
So worms need cool conditions to be able to get out in. Hornworms and some other types, they can manage to survive in that heat. So those you can find during the day. But if you're starting to see damage and it's just a little here and there, we go out with a light at night, shine it up under the leaves of the plants, and a lot of times I can find that worm, and I grab him and I get rid of him.
Yeah.
If I've done everything else I can do and I need to spray, I'm only going to use an organic insecticide. It's called BT. There's many different brands and names, but you can mix it, spray it on the foliage, and what will happen is that worm will come and it'll eat the foliage or whatever has been sprayed on. Then it's going to digest it, and it's going to basically cause them to die internally. So very effective, but then I can also take my produce and it's my label, it's safe to eat the next day after I wash it. So whereas if I use something like say liquid 7 dust or any other like pesticide, you typically have what they call harvest interval time. and that means from the time I spray, I can't harvest anything off this plant. And once I reach that harvest time of 3, 5, 7, some crops have 21 day,
Dang.
that means that the toxicity is low enough for it to be approved for eating. Doesn't mean there ain't any in there, but again, for me, I'm growing food for quality, taste, and health. So, you know, we don't use any, hardly, BT is about the only thing I ever use, and that's very rare as well.
Do you need me to write that down?
BT, yeah, what is it, BT?
BT or Caterpillar Killer. You guys go to my store, they'll know what you need.
Okay.
So,
And it doesn't hurt the plant.
nope. You just spray it as needed because they have to digest it. So if you spray it, it rains the next
So I
day.
put it in like a sprayer and just,
I just put it in a little spray bottle and I just
Oh,
spray
okay.
the plants.
so it doesn't have to be necessarily under the leaves, you know,
No,
just put it on top.
not necessarily because they're gonna get it doesn't matter if they put it on the bottom, they eat the whole thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're right.
For tomatoes, next big culprit for me is squirrels.
Really?
Squirrels get in there, they're looking for moisture, water. Birds do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking for
You
moisture,
have birds?
peck a hole in it, or the squirrel takes one bite out of it and throws it down, teases you, makes you angry. But if we circle all the way back to when I talked about early planting and those hoops,
Oh, yeah.
if I start having problems with that, I put my hoops back out and then I put my net, keeping it off of the plant. That way I can pull it up and I can get in there and do my work without having to be a hassle. Where there's some people will try to put, netting over poles and it's slipping all the way through. Hoop system is versatile. It can be used for many things. First year we put the garden out back. There's about 500 stray cats out here at any given time, I feel like, and a raised bed is the perfect litter box.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah,
So-
I've
I
got
know,
that
he's
problem.
fighting that.
So we got rid of that problem with our hoop systems
Oh.
and our PVC by just netting, and then the cats.
Did
You
you
know,
write that netting
so-
down? Whatever type that
It's
netting?
just a bird netting essentially, or
No, you called it something, the
the frost
material-
cloth.
Frost cloth.
Now I have some of that black netting,
Yeah.
it's got little squares,
Yeah.
that'll help, I
Yep,
guess, keep,
that'll help keep birds and other
Yeah.
pests out. So
but you gotta have the hoops to go.
yeah, because you want it off the plant.
Yes.
So
How about the stink bugs?
stink bugs, there is no, once you have them, there is no solution that's super easy. Now, the best defense for stink bugs is to go back to timing. When I told y'all earlier last year I planted on February 6th,
Mhm.
my plants were done producing before the stink bugs ever showed up. So planting early,
Meaning they were already the height you wanted them to be.
they already went, as soon as the temperatures got right, they flowered, started setting fruit, versus they're still focused on growing. If I plant too late, my plant's still focused on growth and getting to mature size before it starts flowering and producing. And by then, we get into June,
Yeah,
it's too hot, it's getting hot, that's when the stink bugs come. And
okay,
the only way to kill a stink bug with a pesticide is to spray it directly on them. And with a pesticide, as I mentioned, those harvest interval times, now I have to wait 5 days before I can harvest. Well, in 5 days, there's more stink bugs. This here is
yeah, I've seen that.
that's the nymph, so that's the adolescent stage. So that's like a group of babies. Then they're going to turn into adults, and they're a multi-generational insect in one season. So they'll constantly be there. So your best defense is early planting. And if your early planting doesn't work out, you can always plant at the normal time that you might have in the past and still get somewhat of a crop. But going into it that, hey, stink bugs are probably going to be an issue if my early planting doesn't work out. So if you do start to develop stink bugs, the only simple way to get rid of them, you can mix up soapy water in a spray bottle. When they're in an adolescent stage, you can spray them. The surfactants in your soap will drop them and it can kill them. Or you can get you a pair of gloves, grab them, knock them off into a bucket of soapy water. That it will kill them. When they're an adult, that typically doesn't work as well. You can't spray it on them. You can knock them into a bucket and they can't fly off because the surfactants kind of stick their wings, they're wet. If you start developing a lot of big problems with them, get you a handheld vacuum cleaner. Sounds crazy, but it works. You can go out there and you see them or in groups. You can suck them off the leaves, open it up, dump them into a bucket of soapy water, and why this works is because not only are you removing what's causing the damage right now, the more stink bugs you can remove from your environment, it's going to decrease the amount you have next year. All these insects, you don't see,
Multiply.
where do they go during the winter? They're overwintering somewhere. So the more you remove from the environment, the slower start they're going to have of coming back. That doesn't mean that they're not else around you,
Yeah.
neighbors and so on, but it's important that the more insects you can remove from the environment that are detrimental, it helps break their life cycle. So the little vacuum trick, it works. My mom had the problems. I bought her one. She loves doing it, and whenever she grows, and it works. So you're not having to get out there and put your hands on them in simple way.
That's pretty cool.
Now, on the other end, peppers, the most common thing that you're going to see on peppers is aphids. Aphids are a sap-sucking insect. That means they're sucking sugars from inside the plant to feed on. The best defense for sap-sucking pests is a robust soil diet, because if you have the right amount of nutrients, the right pH, and you're doing the right things in the soil over and over again and building a healthy soil, your plants become healthier. And just like humans, plants have immune systems. They can defend themselves against certain disease and pests. And when a plant is optimally healthy, a lot of the sugars inside plants can't be used by some of these pests. So they're going to go somewhere else. I give this example all the time. Carrie has a hibiscus at home we've had for 10 years.
Oh.
Same thing happens. I haven't sprayed it in 2 years, I think, at this point. If I get aphids on it, the first thing I do is I realize, hey, I haven't been feeding enough. It's in a pot, so the nutrients are washing out. It's stressed. The watering, I'm not watering it enough. So it's all elemental issues that are in my control. So I start feeding more with a liquid organic. And over time, a couple of 2-3 weeks, I'll start seeing that population deteriorate.
And when you say you feed it with the liquid, are you spraying it on the plant?
I just
The water.
water with it.
That's what the pet needs
You know,
to do.
and I'm not saying that is always going to be a solution, because there's other elements and factors that you can't control. But in a container, we did this as a trial, and I've seen that it works. It doesn't mean I'm not going to get them again, but seeing a pest like an aphid is not necessarily a problem. The pest doesn't just come for no reason. He's an indicator that there's an outlying issue here. Now, worms, stink bugs, they don't tell you a lot. They're just there.
Is that the white lice?
Those are that's a mealybug. They're very similar, same kind of concept.
So you treat it the same way.
You know, and if when I'm dealing like in vegetables and my plants, if they're looking really sickly, I might have to spray something like neem oil to kill them. But that's always been my last resort. My first go-to when I start seeing mealybugs, aphids, whiteflies, is that my feeding regimen and my soil health might not be optimal. So I'm going to ramp up what I do.
And fertilize it with that.
Fertilize it
Not
with this,
necessarily spray the plant. Okay.
and it drastically
It
helps.
drives me crazy. I used to have beautiful hibiscus, and
Feed-
every time
if they're in a
I get
container,
those white
feed 'em
things,
more.
These were in the
Feed 'em
ground.
more.
You got your phone?
So
Picture that stuff.
disease. There's a couple different diseases. The first two here are the most common. Early and late blight, tobacco mosaic virus. You do see this sometimes. You get splotchy leaves, kind of yellowing lesions, but blight is the most common. Blight happens because of moisture, humidity, and lack of airflow. And then also when I talked about mulch, this is one of the reasons why I always recommend mulch, because this is going to help keep these diseases, which start in the soil, they splash up onto the bottom of the leaves, and then moisture is what spreads it. So this will help keep that from getting started. Proper pruning will keep those lower branches away from the soil, so that ideally nothing's
So you
going
are
to
supposed to cut off all those lower.
on the bottom. I do to get it away from the soil.
Okay.
You know, a lot of those bottom ones aren't going to produce fruit anyway.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and all those branches take energy and resources. So if I get rid of the ones that are not necessarily producing, then more energy is going to go to the top into my producing branches.
How about suckers?
I don't believe that you need. I don't prune them. We've made more tomatoes than I ever could do with last year.
Cause
And we
these
don't-
suckers are gonna grow into branches
Yeah.
and they're gonna produce.
I don't say that it's right or wrong to prune them if you want,
Okay.
but it's up to you. I don't prune them. I just don't get into it that much. I get plenty enough as it is. So these two things, number one defense for blight, there's no cure once you get this. You can't spray something on it, make it go away. All you can do is mitigate the circumstances. But mulch, number one, defense. Number two, keeping those lower branches away from the soil. Number three, watering at the soil level. So you can kind of see where I'm going back to. All these pests and problems, a lot of it can be mitigated by some of the things we've already talked about. How you do things and what you're doing. Lastly, if you commonly get these types of diseases, you need to prune more to create more airflow, because if it stays humid under the branches, that's the perfect conditions for disease to spread and be prevalent. So good airflow going through your plants can drastically help. Again, just kind of covering up here, proper watering will prevent a lot of your pest and disease issues. Proper spacing, as I mentioned. I do like to challenge my spacing. I cram a lot in a little space, but I understand what I'm doing. Some are success and some are not, and I learn from that.
See, last year in one of my beds, I put 2 tomato plants. I mean, I had good, harvest, but maybe that's too close.
I'll show you when we're done. I'll show you something that you can maybe look at it from a different perspective. Best way, if you have more than one bed, to eliminate pests and disease is crop rotation. Crop rotation, people think of this on large scale. If you plant the same thing in the same spot time and time and time again, you're making it an ideal environment for pests and disease. Blight, once it's in the soil, it doesn't go away before next season.
How do you get rid of it?
Rotate. So what we do at home, we'll have one bed here, I'll plant my tomatoes or whatever I have here. Next season, I move to the other bed. A lot of people plant the same thing in the same space because that's what's easy. Hey, this works. I have a plan, but what you need to do is step back and think about how can I have a plan for year 1, year 2, and if I have enough beds, I plan for year 3, and I make me a little plot.
Oh, okay.
And I plan it out because every year that I move them around, I'm helping eliminate disease and pests from overwintering. There might be in that bed.
I don't understand, if all you grow is tomatoes.
Then you're opening yourself up for more potential pests and disease
I think I'm
issues.
opening myself up to drive to HEB.
Oh no.
She doesn't mess with.
have a little
She doesn't mess with it anyway. I do.
fruit and vegetable stand that you sell
Oh,
out
no.
of or something?
No, we honestly, like, probably 50% of the stuff we get, we never makes it to being used.
Why?
We're just too busy.
Oh my God.
We're just, well, we don't get a lot. We grow enough for what we want, and then, but we're very busy people. So like it's.
I believe that, but man, nothing like a good tomato.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
Last thing on here, proper soil food web. That means promoting good bacterias, fungi, soil microorganisms, good drainage, a proper, the soil is a living thing, just like we are, and just like the plant is, they work together. Last other issues that you'll get, blossom end rot. This happens from calcium deficiency within the plant. Most of the time, this happens from either elemental issues or user-induced issues. Most of the time, there's probably plenty of calcium actually in the soil, but we're either overwatering and there's none available in the root zone of the plant, or if it's really, really dry and we're underwatering and the soil is dry, then it can't absorb that calcium. So this can be corrected with a calcium supplement if you begin to get it. You follow the directions on any given product that works for it, and usually
that's
you can
not the
rectify.
same thing as blight.
You'll see like sunken lesions on the bottom of the
To me,
tomato.
that's I always think it's overwatering.
And it's a calcium deficiency, but it could be from overwatering. So it's important. A lot of times you can prevent this by how you're maintaining the garden. I couldn't tell you the last time I've gotten blossom end rot. You know, but it's all about how some of these other things I've talked about, they will help you prevent this. Because if you're using a good fertilizer, you got calcium in here. There's probably some in there already, but it's just not available to the plant because if we go through a wet season, you know, we can't control Mother Nature.
Right.
But we have to realize, hey, it's been really, really wet. We're getting a lot of rain. I might need to make sure I'm putting something in here with calcium. So,
Question, that, stuff you use to cover the plants, I
Mhm.
forgot what you called it. If we have a really huge rain for like 5 or 7 days or whatever, do you put that up? Does it eliminate the water coming?
no, it's permeable. It breathes. Water can go through it.
Oh.
It's, you know, it's just like, think of it like insulation.
So there's nothing you can do if we have
No,
a
I mean,
heavy rain?
You need that rain. That rain has got more nutrients
Yeah.
and benefits in it than anything else that we can
Okay.
provide. Lastly, you'll see blossom drop. Sometimes within the right
Cucumbers.
season,
No.
the blossoms will drop. If it's in the season where like you're growing and you haven't started setting fruit yet, and it's like March, April, maybe
Yeah.
early
You
May,
touch them and it,
sometimes just your blossoms are dropping. They're not holding or they're not setting. You can use something called Blossom Set to spray on there. It's an enzyme to help keep the bloom on there long enough to set. But the majority of the time that people come to me and they're having blossom drop, it's because they waited too long to plant, and then the blossoms are dropping because it's too late to set fruit. And it's another reason why timing is important. You've got to have these things in the ground because once the nighttime temperatures get 75 and above, that's usually followed with high humidity, and then the pollen in the flower gets sticky, and a tomato plant is not pollinated by bees or pollinators. It's self-pollinated. So
when are you gonna get your tomato plants in?
this week, or next week's, next
Yeah.
week. So
Next week,
Yeah.
okay.
we should get our first. We'll get a limited amount, but we'll start getting them in coming up
And
now.
that's not too early.
Nope.
Okay.
Not for me.
Well, not for me either, but I'd like to say I'm gonna put my compost in and start working my
Yeah.
bed by hand.
Yep.
Okay,
So most of the time, if you got blossom drop, it's temperature issues, or like you planted too late in the season and it's too hot already. So if you think about that, like, is the nighttime temperature above 75? Is it humid as heck outside right now? That means that pollen is sticky and it can't fall into the flower and actually pollinate. So
okay.
there's nothing you can do to change that. That
Right.
means your timing was off, and you just, it is what it is.
It is what it is, okay.
Harvesting, you can pick them, you know, ripe, blushed. You know, ideally, harvesting on the vine is always going to produce the most flavorful, most nutritious. You know, if you're having pest issues, you know, as soon as you start seeing them.
He gets paranoid. He just
You know, if I don't have
wants to
pest
get 'em out.
issues, we let them ripen on there. But if we start having some issues where, like, you know, birds or
Stink bugs are
Yeah.
almost,
then as soon as I start seeing them get pink or red, I'll pick them and then we ripen them inside. You know, there's
That's what
nothing
he
wrong with
likes
that. You know,
to do. I like him on.
your peppers, you know, you pick them whenever they get to the size you're really looking for. You can also look on some peppers for what they call corking. Corking is whenever it looks like you start getting like little cracks in them.
Oh,
That's not a bad thing. Those little marks, it's natural. It's not that it's been on there too long, but it is a good indicator that hey, it's ready. So a lot of people think that that's like something's wrong with it. There's
Mhm.
nothing wrong with it. Certain peppers cork and others don't. And that's it.
oh.
all right.
So
Well,
and that's a link to my channel. Like if you want to check it out, you know,
Okay,
we'll have.
now when you say that's a link to your channel, but I can go to YouTube.
you
Yep.
can take a,
If you take your phone out and just open up the camera, it'll pop up a link you can click on. Or if you're on the computer, you can just go and you can
Well,
find me on
I
there.
don't know if you can put it on your phone, you just gotta click on it. When it goes to YouTube, that's where it's,
Mhm.
but I mean, once I go to YouTube, I can open it up right there